So if the husband has land, then the husband can give some land to the woman. But if the husband doesn't have land and the woman head or those in the family who manage land, they have to go through a male figure, either their brother or any male person with, or their brother or a male member in the community will lead them to the elders of the community, who then will lead the woman to the chief. And so these are the nature of hurdles women have to go through before approaching landowners when their families have no land. And these hurdles are even much more deeper for migrant families or women who have migrated from other places to farm in the northern part of Ghana. So even the people who come from the community, the women there find it difficult to access landowners. So in the case of migrant farmers, it is even more extremely difficult and exposes them to poverty. But one thing that we also found in the northern region is that the concept of women groups have come up very strongly. So we see these women coming together to form groups. First, it started as a voluntary savings and loans group, but now they've moved on to advocating for women's rights. And these groups they come together, and even before the group can access landowners, the chairman of that women's group must be a male, because by their cultural principles, a woman cannot directly approach landowners. So even when women come together to pool resources, it is still difficult for them to access land. And so they form women groups and have a male figure as the chair who approaches community elders, then to the chief, before a land is allocated to the women's group. What we notice is that across, despite all of these hurdles they go through, the lands to them are not recorded. They are not also given to them even under the customary arrangement where it's becoming fertile. The male members in the community tend to take the land away from them because it was not given to them under any tenure arrangement. So we try to trace back to whether by way of policy we've been very deliberate about women's access to land. And so we trace as deep as the year 2000. So over 2 decades ago, the major land policies or reforms that we've seen has been the National Land Policy, the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. There's also the Land Administration Project done with the World Bank. The Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy 1 and 2 has a section that focuses on land administration. Then the recent New Lands Act. And you see that prior to the New Lands Act, all of these policies just have a line that talks about women access to land, and there was no deliberate program designed to accelerate women's access to land or minimize these barriers that women encounter. So over the last 2 decades, policy recognizes that land access is not equal for every person in this country. And so all the policies that we realized that we recognize the problem, but there has not been any deliberate step to address this inequality until the New Lands Act that purposely set up a section that addresses discriminations or inequities by way of gender, race, or religion. But despite even the New Lands Act, we see that most of the chiefs in our rural areas where agricultural activities happen are not well abreast with the New Lands Act. They don't even know their condition. Maybe the area you focus on in the northern region, we see that the New Lands Act, most of the landowners do not even know, right from the family to community elders as well as to the chief, are not even aware of the New Lands Act and the conditions, and even when they want to give, let's say, traditional lands to people, that by way of the chief giving it to you and the community members present, through their customary arrangement, it is still secure. So the women do not know, people in the community are not even aware of the provisions in the law. That makes it even more easier for them to have access to communal lands without going through the tall process of registering it. They also don't know the other forms of acquisition that are protected by law. And at the local level, because our land registration and administration system are not decentralized deep down to even the district or community level, even when these community groups get support to register the land, it becomes very difficult. So there is also a bit of hesitancy to documenting land for women, because there's a cultural perception that the women will get the land and will start controlling the men. So beyond even the near barriers, there's still the cultural hesitancy to giving land to men. But what we identify with the women's group is that the women groups are able to amplify the needs of women, and some get the land. And they tend to get support also from civil society like IMANI. IMANI, as Mr. Kujo mentioned, we are currently funding a women's group in the northern region to develop their land, because we notice that beyond access, land development is also a problem. And so when the chief gives them the land and it's not developed, they are also sort of not incentivized to offer them more lands again, because the ones that they even gave to them had not been developed. For example, in Tolon, there was an area that was dedicated to women's group, but because they didn't have support to develop it, the chief had to also take it from them and give it to other people. And so we look at land development and realize that through the women's group, the voluntary savings and loans, they're able to gather some amount of money and do land development, but they are not able to do much. The women's group that we are dealing with was able to do half an acre. After collecting monies from about 50 women in the group, they were only able to cultivate half an acre. And so he took half for his own planting. And even when they have it, they can't cultivate it, because the money they have is very small until they get support from the ministry or from civil society organizations or NGOs that are promoting women in agriculture. Then we also identify that when the woman has access to land, the tendency for their children to be in school was high. So the examples that they gave us that when they had secured land, most of their children were in school. But now that their lands have been taken away from them, we found evidences of children who were in the house, mainly because the women could not provide for them in terms of money for their education, particularly for those going into higher education. We saw that majority of the family members who were supposed to proceed to senior high school or to tertiary institutions had to stop because their parents, the women who actually are responsible for their care did not have lands. And so if we want negation and exclusion of women to land access, for example, we see in Rwanda and other countries that when they did their new land reform, there was a deliberate attempt to ensure that women have access to land. And so by way of policy, we should have a policy framework that looks at engaging landowners or working with landowners to create some room for women to also have access to land. So for example, if a community has 100 acres of land, by way of policy, we should be able to collaborate with the women's role in agriculture. Then there will be some sort of, some amount of money designated to support women's group who are involved in agriculture to start with land development. So the work we are doing in the north, we are basically doing land development, seed acquisition, and also funding the women's sort of labor activity. And that has taken about 80% of the hurdle away for the women's group. And the chiefs were willing to give the lands to us. So if, as part of the work of the MPs, we can dedicate a section of the MPs Common Fund to promote women in agriculture, we believe that it will enhance their economic freedom and prosperity and mainly address poverty reduction in the rural areas. Our evidence shows that if women are productive or have access to productive resources, then poverty reduction will be very faster, and that is what all the work of the World Bank has been focused on, getting women access to productive resources, and that can reduce poverty. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much to colleagues. You have finished the presentation. If we have questions, we can ask the questions now. Contribution, not only questions. I think before we started, I made it clear that we finished with the Land Act. It's signed and it's now in the system. But we need some of these contributions just to make sure that the regulations and then the instruments that will make the Land Act operational, we can, input some of these suggestions. So the floor is now open and members can start asking their questions. Let's start from you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Speak to the mic.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, let me thank the presenter for the good work done. It's good we have this women as a big group in our advocacy. But let's look at what has made women vulnerable. I think you have mentioned some of the issues. Basically, it's culture. Government can do all the policies, factor in women, but if we don't advocate our people to change their cultural thinking, will still go back to school. We cannot implement it. That's why I say the 2020 land law made a provision for acquisition of land by women, but the implementation is weak. Let's see a woman women don't own property.
Why?
No, when I talk of women don't own property, let's take the case of even north. It is more pronounced in the north, but even in the account areas, it's pronounced. A woman, yes, let me finish. You marry your wife, probably she's from a different town, and you bring her to your town. So the land there is for the family. And the brothers there have more access and claim to the land more than she coming to marry you. And at your place to the land, you own the land. And you have to make a portion of the land available to her. If you don't make available part of the land to her, can she go and take it? No. So these are areas we have to look at and see how we can advocate.
So it means we need to check the cultural practices.
Then secondly, the last slide about MPs common fund. MPs have no
talk about that one.
MPs have no common fund. Per the law, it's district assembly common fund, of which a portion is allocated.
4.5.
Yes. It's allocated to MPs. So if we want to, maybe we have to fine tune the language here, so that maybe we can advocate for common fund
to the district assembly.
To the assembly, a portion should be allocated to women. Just like we have a portion allocated to people with disability.
Yeah.
That was straight from Accra. It is stated this percent. Even those days, it was embossed in the assemblies. Yeah. But this time around, they desegregated it. I think it is 3% or something. It goes straight to the disabled. That one, when it comes, the MC or whoever is there cannot touch it. So if we do that, if we advocate for that one and it works, then it will be a perfect
Good.
Yes.
Let it come this way.
Okay, Chairman, thank you very much.
Use the mic.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would say that the issues discussed here are not pertaining to Northern Region alone. But I'm from Apollonia, and we have stool land. So our late chief decided to allocate 3 plots each to the natives. I was then the student secretary, so I was in charge. And we made sure, yes.
And how many do you have?
So we decided to give to all natives, including women. But those of you who know Accra land system, if you are not strong, you have the land all right.
The land guys can come and collect.
Yes. So the tenant security also applies to some communities in Apollonia, and also the development aspect of it. Because the women don't have the money to develop the lands immediately. You see these boys going around. Once they see the land lying free, they will take it from them. Even their own children, they can also even sell the land at the land side of their monies.
Okay.
So if you are looking at this place, you have to look at areas.
So it's not restricted to the north only, across Ghana. Okay, next. Bro, you can pass it on. Collins.
Okay. I walked in late, but I heard the tail end.
By your constituency, should be no woman has land.
You mean what? I don't know what you're talking about. All the lands, all the you are getting. I had the tail end of the presentation. Now, he mentioned culture, which I fully agree.
Yeah.
But we have to look at Article 267 in its entirety. I think that's what the problem is.
Of the constitution?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You do announcement this time. You should not.
What does it say?
That is one of the most I don't know.
Unfortunate.
I won't know. Unfortunate is too mild.
But don't use any other way.
I won't use a strong word.
You just use unfortunate. What does it say?
Oh. It talks about the land tenure system in the northern part of Ghana. Right?
In our constitution.
Yes, I think 267.
36 or 267?
267.
Yeah.
267.
Yeah, that's 2 lands.
Yes. 267. You have to look at it, modify it to reflect modern trends. Right? It's so discriminatory, as I believe, but lawyers sat down to put that provision in the constitution. Very discriminatory.
No, 267 talks about 2 lands generally.
I'm not going to that.
He
Yes,
has seen something.
No, I was talking about land to speak.
He has seen it and he is pointing it out. Go and read, please. Please.
Who has the constitution?
Let's make progress.
Bring the constitution.
Continue.
What constitution?
Let's read and digest.
And I'll move articles now.
That's all now.
Please.
I'm not about that. There's no way to read the constitution.
Should be a lawyer.
Okay. All 2 lands, 267, I read.
Is it not
For the record.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that? I want to continue. If I'm not continuing.
Go ahead.
All 2 lands in Ghana, listen. All 2 lands in Ghana shall vest in the appropriate stool on behalf of and in trust for the subjects of the stool in accordance with the customary law and usage. That's 267.1. Okay. Then you go to oh, there's a bit about the school 2 lands in North. Yes, 1 minute.
Which are 259.
And I 259. Let me see. 259, 267. 259. Okay, let me go to 259. See if it's there.
Try
If you
259.
couldn't get it, carrying out no,
I said try
that's no,
259.
that's last commission. That's last commission. It's 267. It's there. I can't.
So
Like all 2 lands are vested in the stools and skins and what have you. That's what I want to get.
That's the 267.
Yeah, but I can't. Yeah.
it's there.
One of the clauses.
One of the clauses, but I can't see.
That's what you read.
You are disturbing my train of thought. Abba.
That's what you read first. So we can
Are you
continue.
coming here from the radio station?
So in addition to what Sanja was saying about the cultural, looking at the cultural trends and vis-a-vis the constitution and the land distribution in our country, that's one of the most unfortunate provisions in our constitution. And me, I'm speaking as a non-lawyer and tell you about the unfairness of that provision in our constitution, which ought to be addressed in line with what Sanja was saying about women-only lands and what have you. So that's, I don't know how he started, so that's why I cannot go into it. But the tail end of it and his contribution, I want to add on. And we must look at reviewing that provision.
So that the lands will not be vested in the stools alone.
Yes, why just not?
No,
It's not for the north.
It's not for the north.
It's for the whole country.
It's for the whole country.
You go and come back. Let me find it.
It's for the whole country.
You say your bit, I'll say my bit.
Okay, let's move on and then look for your. No. Let Arafat speak. And then,
No, but you are making reference. If you are making your opinion, fine. But you are making reference.
Fantiapa, continue whilst he looks for the provision in the constitution.
I just observed that the last bit, you made a recommendation that there should be a policy directive or a law directive that will allocate a percentage of the common fund for land issues, women land issues. I just want to observe that that will be a difficult one for the simple reason that when you have policies like having some allocation for, let's say, disabled, it is manageable. The disabled are not too many. But if you say women, well, about half or maybe more than half of the population. So the common fund should be allocated for women to acquire lands or to be able to operate their lands. I don't think it will be feasible. I don't think it will work. Because there are too many women, and I don't think the common fund can do that. If they find another vehicle to, like everybody said, it's really cultural. So it's not a question of lack of resources of the women. It's cultural. So if you can change the cultural attitude, the cultural practices, that would be the best solution.
Okay, all right.
Chairman, forgive me. You know, I called you earlier on that I have
So you 30 minutes.
Yeah, so my name is Judge Kwame Awaji. Chairman, this I would just want to find out from those from the north how the patrilineal system lands is being shared over there, because I'm from the matrilineal system. So when my late grandfather died, that's my mother's father, the lands were shared among the children. We inherited my mom is late now. We inherited my mom's land. She was having a vast land. She gave some to people to do this agunu and all those things. So
Divided by 2.
That is in the law as agunu. So if I say so, you go and read your landlord act.
Yeah.
So I just want to find out. I don't know if this program pertains only in the patrilineal system or both sides. Because in our side, women owns land. I don't know if they share it in the patrilineal system. They don't give it to the women, or they give it to the men. Or Sanja Nanja, I think, or my boss.
Unfortunately, all the northern
MPs,
they are not there.
They're not
The north, but we have.
Yeah, we
have
need to find out.
Yeah. We have information about how they do it there. So I think.
So I don't think in our side we have much program.
So you are saying matrilineal system is better.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman,
Please.
First of all, let me thank IMANI for taking the step to share this investigation they have done, or an outcome of an investigation they have done with this committee that has the responsibility for lands and forestry. After listening to, before I even came in, I read the letter you sent to us, and anytime I come across discrimination against women, denying women lands, I begin to wonder what exactly we talk about. These are matters that are deeply rooted in our culture and tradition. If the culture of a particular group of people say that women must not benefit from land, but it's rather the men, and you want to make a change, the place to make a change certainly is not Parliament. The place to influence the change is the traditional authorities and those who are in charge of the culture. And almost invariably, that effort you make to change the culture can also generate in something else. Everybody cherishes his or her culture. And so any attempt to make a change, the initial resistance is something that you should expect. People will resist it. In your presentation, you said that the dominant types of land ownership is the allodial and the inheritance. You are right. If it is allodial and you are a woman in in that family that has alluded right over the land. You benefit. You benefit. If it is by inheritance, and your family inherits, you, by virtue of the fact that you are part of the family, you are likely to benefit. So me, this presentation and the others that I have heard before, I've always thought that you break it down so we know exactly where the problem is. If it is about a particular clan, a particular community, we can go into it and look at how it is. You give examples, but what you fail to tell us is how land ownership in those areas are. If it is an area where the land is owned by the state, we can sit as a parliament, look at our policies, look at our laws, and fashion it in a way that land allocation benefits women more. But in our case, IMANI, we will all join you, but I'm not sure we'll be successful. But it has to do with the culture of some people. Can you imagine going to the north to tell Yabongura or go to Nairi and tell Nairi that we are a delegation or we're members of the Parliamentary Committee on Lands and Forestry. We have come here to talk to you about changing the culture and making women prominent. Hey, Assembly Park.
I like the Nairi as an example. My former director, who said that will go away.
So I think that we need to look at the way we go about these things in a manner that will not affect culture, but will still have something for the women. Do something that women can have access to that is if they want. We can continue that conversation another time. And the issue about part of the common fund, which we suggest should be dedicated to women development in agriculture. It's not a bad idea at all. It's a very laudable idea. But I've always had a problem since the introduction of common fund. Every development in every part of Ghana is common fund. In fact, if you go to our constituencies in our districts, the common fund that the MP gets is 5% of what goes to the assembly. 5% of what goes to the assembly itself. But any community looking for a school, MP. Water, MP. Electrification, MP. Road, MP. And you know something. And you know something. Chief, I am raising this concern so you also support us in educating the public, sensitizing the public, so the pressure on us will come down. It is good you raise it, because I've already indicated that as for the MP, he gets 5%, and it is because the 5% given to the MP is because the member of parliament is not supposed to be directly involved in development. But because if you go to your communities, there are some small things that emergency issue that you need to address. You are giving 5%. The bulk of it, the bulk of the common fund goes to the assembly, because this assembly is the agent of development. So if somebody gets, for example, 75,000 Ghana cedis, a quarter, and is unable to fix broken boreholes, is unable to fix toilets, is unable to provide boreholes, school buildings, how do you expect 5% of that to be able to achieve that? But our constituents hold these things against us, not the assembly. It is as if the assembly don't exist at all. It's as if the assembly don't exist at all. So it's a big, in fact, an elephant issue.
Hey,
You have
I think you want to feel.
Which can only be solved by
What
the
about
blue elephant. Blue elephant is blue elephant. Not even the ordinary one, the blue ones.
No, we are 4-4.
You see, to make the issue more understandable is that the 5% is part of a budget that this House approves and the Ministry of Local Government. We are talking about a percentage of this 5% for the development of women in agriculture. We have a ministry responsible for the development of agriculture. And then we also have another ministry for gender, women and children affairs. They all take budget allocations. And these are big, big allocations. So if the budget for the Ministry of Agriculture cannot do this, if the budget for the Minister for Women and Children Affairs or Gender cannot be used to address this, if the common fund for the Assembly cannot be used to address this problem, I am afraid the 5% for the MP, which takes care of almost everything, cannot be used. So it is good you have raised it, but based on the discussions that we have had, the conversation that has taken place this morning, maybe it will help you shift the goalpost from the MP share of the common fund. Perhaps you put it there because you were going to have a meeting with MPs and you thought that would be charitable enough. Half of 5% is so committed, it's in fact but it can be properly targeted. It's not a bad idea. Look at Minister of Agriculture. When you have the opportunity of meeting them, we can make this suggestion to Minister of Agriculture. Just provide a line item for the development of women and then in agriculture, and that will help solve this problem. So for now, that is what I would say.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also
finally, this young man, should be Honorable Eugene. He tried to make a suggestion which was not properly grounded. There's nowhere in the Constitution where what he was talking about it's not there. The only thing that talks about northern land is the divesting.
Yeah, divesting. Yeah.
The divesting of northern lands. It was vested.
It was vested
and the Constitution from 1969 divested. That is the only part of the Constitution.
Where is it? Which clause?
That's why I read 259. Article 259 C.
It's not there.
I don't know.
Okay.
Exactly where.
All right.
So
thank you.
So your submission sought to mislead this committee.
It's not true.
Thank you very much. I have two observations. The first one is educating the people on the New Land Act, which is something I know they have started, and we will urge them to continue, because at least the women can get a little freedom when they read the Land Act, the new one. And then the second one is decentralizing the Lands Commission services to the districts, so that those who have these lands can register without traveling to the region or wherever. These two things, I think, we will make sure we talk to the commission, and then we'll work with. We have been talking about this for long, but it's good you are also coming in. In my own house, back in my, my town, I lost my mom 5 years ago. My mom has big land, Now, during the first anniversary, the 1 year, we met and we have two brothers and 3 sisters. Now my elderly sister, the one behind me, I'm the first one. She told us straight that we the men, when we need land, we can go and buy. Because our mother's land is for them, the women. And I told her, no, once we are alive, we can even farm on the land, but we are not going to give these lands or any property there to our children. It should be left within the family. That is Ashanti and the Akan community where we inherit maternally. Because if I till any land, if I do any agricultural activity on my mommy's land, and I pass away, it becomes the property of my mother's family. It cannot be given out. So some of these things, the problems are so huge when you go to the patrilineal system, because the man can marry more than 5.
And that's why there's confusion in the patrilineal system.
And then all the women will be pouncing on the small land, and then we get these problems. But still, we still have food for thought. Even though my good brother, senior, the veteran, said the common fund is not enough for this, at least we know where to channel this request to agric and gender. Like he said, we can judge with them and let them also have something to do with this proposal you are making. But believe me, as for the MP's common fund, I can tell you, I'm going to, buy jerseys and footballs against the common fund that has not come. Because some people are playing gala on Father's Day. So I have to go and Salah matches and gala and what. So today, I call the man who gives me jersey that he should give me jersey against the common fund yet to be paid. So that is the problem with our common fund. Because they vote for the MP, everybody thinks he's part of your appointment or your success as MP, but because only the assemblymen vote for the DCE, very few people go to him. Because as for the MP, if you don't mind us, December will come. But for the DCE, my constituency, only 21 people vote for the DCE. Because they are the assembly members. So although we take 5% of what they are allocated, the pressure is on the MP's common fund. So that is what my colleague wanted to explain. But notwithstanding, we still have this food for thought, and we'll be thinking along the line. So if you can go to the next presentation, I know you have 2. Oh, the other one is also done. Okay. So if you have any comments,
then
we
can add on to
yeah.
what Chairman is saying. And I'm going from experience, the matrilineal system has increased so many problems. Because my wife, from the day I marry you as a wife, you know what belongs to the family is family. Whatever I get from my sweat is what I bequeath some to you, and it is some to the family. You understand? So this situation in Greater Accra, where we are right on the Spintex Road, from Coca-Cola roundabout. Look at all the structures on the right and match it to the right, left. You see this are Ghanaian. You see these are properly from the chiefs. You can see from the structures. You need the designs, the haste. People are rushing to build, but you don't build. Land guards with them. Yes. So that confusion is what we must all look at addressing. And why Greater Accra? They are go to water rating. They are patrilineal. Go to London, they are patrilineal.
Because the Greater Accra lands have value now.
But is it value or just because
it's the value?
It's the family system.
No, it's the value.
Oh, really?
Okay. Areas around where the value of land is high, you see the same problem.
Chairman,
mostly is the value.
Chairman, you see that of Accra is more pronounced, not only because of the value. It is even their chieftaincy system, part of it.
Families.
Because if you go deep into the Accra chieftaincy system, you get to realize that they don't have a single authority.
You see, I worked with the survey department in my earlier life. What I realized is that the Ghana lands, they were not properly mapped. Like you take land at Frafraha and beyond, and then the chief at La. come and tell you that land belongs to him, and then Nungua will also chase you when you get into a machine. And then when you tell them to give the boundary, it's funny.
Yes.
Because in Ashanti, we had this man called Fuller. He was in the Gold Coast time, he was the governor, and he was a surveyor.
Yes.
So most of the areas with problems, he demarcated.
But it's not towards
Good, a surveyor. So most of the lands with problems, he demarcated. And number two, the authority given to Otumfo. Let me tell you this, the authority, a story here, Adakujache and Kwamo, you know when you go into Kumasi, Adakujache on the right and then Kwamo on the left and some parts of the right. They had land disputes for many years. The old Otumfo Opoku tried for many years, he couldn't solve. One day, this new Otumfo Kokudia called me when I was the regional surveyor in Ashanti. He called the Lands Commission boss, he called the Town and Country Planning boss that time, and then the National Archives. And he invited them to mention that whatever information we have about the two towns and their boundaries, you should come and give to him. No information, because of course Fuller didn't demarcate anything there. There was no confusion there, so he didn't demarcate anything there. And Otumfo said, okay. Then he called all of them and he said he was going to give judgment. Hey, that issue, you know how he did the judgment? He said, Nana Kwamo, do you know the land you are occupying is for me? He said, yes. Adakujachi, do you know you are sitting on my land? He said, yes. And because the two of you are caretakers, and I'm the owner of the land, I'm going to give you the boundary, whether it's the same boundary as you years back or anything. I'm giving you a boundary now from today up to the end of life. Your boundary is the Accra Road.
Stay on your right.
All those
on your right.
Any land Kwame has given, which is in the left, is still valid. And any land Adakujachi Chief has given on the right is still valid. But nobody should cross that Accra Road. Mr. Regional Surveyor, go and demarcate. I said, Nana, as for Accra Road, we don't need any demarcation. We all know. And that authority is there. And if you say, wait, he will destroy you. But here in Accra, all the chiefs are big and they are the same.
Yeah. They're not even
the family heads.
No, the stools.
The stools. Yeah. So that is the difference.
Even beyond the stool.
Otumfo can destroy you. Whether the paramount chiefs by law, their land issues don't come to Kumasi. The paramount chiefs, like Josohene, Mampohene, they are authorities over their own lands, but they report to the Golden Stool. So if you operate on these lands and you don't do it well, he will destroy you from Kumasi. He will destroy Mampo, destroy everybody. So there is that authority making sure that the land. But in Accra, everybody is strong.
Yeah.
And their boundaries are not even defined.
The chairman.
Sometimes when they go to courts, you know, every land issue in court, they write to SMD, Survey and Mapping Division of Lands Commission, to go and produce something they call composite plan. The composite plan, you allow each chief to show the boundary, his boundary. And then when this chief shows, you mark it green. When this chief shows, you mark it another color. And then you shade the middle where the conflict is, as the area in conflict. Sometimes they will fight, you go there, the area they are fighting is less than 100 meters. And the judge will easily demarcate that particular middle for them, and then the case ends. But there are times when somebody tells you my land starts from that Unyine tree, the Unyine tree was, you know, it's dead over 20 years ago. The river is dried up. So it's difficult for them to even know the boundary of the land. So it's difficult. But the woman, my sister, the one I started talking about, now, when you need land and you go and see her, at a small fee, and then you till the land for 1 year. So what type of management is that? When you go and tell her, she will fight us. So we are just observing from a distance, making sure that she will not sell freehold to anybody. But we don't have any influence. My other brother too is a lecturer at Central University. So it's supposedly we are employed, so we should leave it for them. So in Ashanti and other places, the women even own the land. But how they will manage the land is even a problem.
How they will manage it is even a problem. And some of the women too, when they have the land and they become the family, you know, the elders in the house too, they try to push part of the land that we are not supposed to till to their husband's house.
To their children.
To their children, from their children, they own the land. But a male child in Ashanti region, you go and find your land somewhere. You can't inherit the family land.
Yeah,
that is the